My name is Lisa. I had recently turned 40, but sometimes it felt like I was just beginning to understand life. I worked in marketing in a bustling city, which was a far cry from the small town where I grew up and where my past lay, including memories of my ex-husband, Max. I remember the first time I met Max. It was at a small cafe in our hometown. He had dark hair, a confident walk, and a smile that made me feel like I was the only one in the room. "Hi, I'm Max. You're Lisa, right?" he had said, offering a firm handshake that lingered a tad longer than necessary. "Yes, and you're—" I had pretended not to know him. It was a small town, after all. Everyone knew everyone. Max Harrison. I've seen you around. Wanted to come up and say hi." We chatted for a while. He was easy to talk to, and we found a lot in common. Within a few months, we were inseparable. Marriage followed, and then came our precious Emily. Emily was the light of our lives. She had my eyes and Max's stubbornness. She was the perfect blend of both of us. But as the years rolled on, it wasn't just Emily's traits that became evident. Max's need for control began to seep into our daily lives. Everything had to be just so, from the color of the curtains to the friends I hung out with. I felt boxed in, trapped. It wasn't love anymore. It was a cage. 10 years into our marriage, I had had enough. It was a painful decision, but I filed for divorce. Max didn't take it well. Neither did his mother, Clara. She had never liked me and made it evident with every chance she got. After the divorce, I moved to another city for a fresh start and a new job. Emily, being the teenage girl she was, chose to stay with Max. She didn't want to leave her school and friends behind. I understood her reasons, but it broke my heart to be away from her. We decided to connect every day on Skype. It wasn't the same as hugging her tight or braiding her hair, but it was something. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at work, I called Emily. The screen lit up, and there she was, her bright eyes shining, her hair pulled into a messy bun. "Hey, Mom," she greeted, her voice a welcome balm to my tired soul. "Hi, sweetie. How was school today?" "It was okay. Jenny and I are working on a project together." "Oh, and guess what? Brian said he might come to my birthday party." I smiled. "That's great, Em. And speaking of your birthday, any idea what your dad is planning as a gift?" She hesitated, her eyes darting away from the screen. I'm not sure. We haven't talked about it much." I felt a prickle of unease, but brushed it aside. Maybe she just wanted it to be a surprise. Little did I know, this was the beginning of a whirlwind of events that would change our lives forever. After our call, I couldn't shake the feeling that Emily was hiding something from me. She had always been open about her life, so her hesitance caught me off guard. As I got ready for bed, my mind raced with possibilities. Was she hiding a boyfriend? Was she struggling at school? The next morning, as I sipped my coffee, I decided to do a little digging. I logged into the social media platform where Emily and her friends were most active. Using my mom account, which was really just a profile I created to keep an eye on her without being intrusive, I scrolled through her posts and those of her friends. That's when I stumbled upon it, a post from Emily that made my heart drop to my stomach. It read, "I'm cool, my father will give me plastic surgery for my birthday." The comments below were a mix of shock, excitement, and envy from her peers. I sat back in my chair, aghast. Plastic surgery? She was only 16. I quickly grabbed my phone and dialed Max's number. "Max," I began, trying to keep my voice steady, "is it true? Are you really planning to give Emily plastic surgery for her birthday?" There was a pause, and then his deep voice came through, dripping with irritation. "Why do you care? She's with me now. You made your choice." "It's not about us, Max. It's about Emily. She's just a kid." "She's not a kid anymore," he shot back. "Besides, it's something she wants." I could hear the defensiveness in his tone. Did she tell you that? Or did you put the idea in her head? Before he could respond, another voice chimed in. It was shrill and unmistakable. Clara. Yes, we'll get her plastic surgery because she looks too much like you. I was taken aback. Clara, why are you involved in this? She laughed, a bitter sound that made my skin crawl. Why wouldn't I be? She's my granddaughter. Enough, Clara, Max intervened, though there was no real force behind his words. Lisa, stay out of it. Emily's with me now. I won't stand by and let you make such a life-changing decision for her, I replied, my voice firm. Max sighed. She wants this, Lisa. It's not like we're forcing her. But why, Max? Why would she want something like this at her age? I don't have to explain myself to you, he retorted, and ended the call. I sat there, phone in hand, the weight of the revelation pressing down on me. My beautiful daughter, who I had always told was perfect just the way she was considering changing herself. And Max and Clara were encouraging it. Tears blurred my vision. I needed to do something. I had to talk to Emily, understand her perspective. Maybe, just maybe, I could make her see that she didn't need to change herself for anyone. Upon arriving in my hometown, the nostalgia of the familiar streets and places was overpowering. Still, my focus remained unwavering. I had to speak with Emily. Our chosen spot was Daisy's Delight, a cafe filled with memories of our shared times. Hey, Em, I began gently when she arrived, her presence filling me with both relief and anxiety. Mom, she said with a note of surprise in her voice. What are you doing here? Taking a deep breath, I decided to tackle the subject head on. I saw your post about the plastic surgery. Almost immediately, her face transformed from surprise to frustration. Why can't you just stay out of my life? Why do you always have to meddle? She shot back. Taken aback, I tried to explain. Em, I'm just concerned. It's a big decision. She slammed her hands on the table, drawing a few glances from nearby customers. This is my life, Mom. You left. You moved away and left me with Dad. You don't get a say in this. Emily, I tried to keep my voice steady. This isn't about us or where I live. It's about making sure you're not making a decision you might regret. She glared at me, her eyes glistening with anger. Dad and Grandma Clara think it's a good idea? Maybe if you were around more, you'd understand. I'm here now, I said quietly, trying to bridge the gap widening between us. And I just want what's best for you. She pushed her chair back abruptly. You always say that, but all you do is control everything, just like with Dad. Without another word, she stormed out of the cafe, leaving me stunned and worried amidst the remnants of our confrontation. The weight of our argument hung heavily on me. I couldn't shake the feeling of guilt and confusion. Was I being too controlling, or was I genuinely trying to protect Emily from a decision she might regret? As I pondered this, an idea struck me. Perhaps if Emily heard from people who loved her and saw her for the beautiful person she was, she might reconsider. Returning to my hotel room, I pulled out my laptop and signed into my social media account. I selected a beautiful picture of Emily and me from one of our recent vacations. The sun was setting, casting a golden hue, and our smiles were genuine and wide. With a deep breath, I typed, "My beautiful daughter, Emily. So proud of her every day. Every time I look at her, I see perfection. I see strength, intelligence, and beauty inside and out." Hitting post, I felt a mixture of hope and anxiety. The minutes felt like hours as I waited for reactions to come in. The first comment appeared from my college friend Sarah. Emily has grown into such a beautiful young lady. She looks just like you, Lisa. Both gorgeous. Then another from my cousin Mark. Wow, time flies. Emily's a spitting image of you when you were her age. Absolutely stunning. More comments poured in, each one praising Emily for her natural beauty, intelligence, and charm. Feeling a little better, I decided to call my best friend Jane for some advice. "Hey, Lisa," Jane answered. "How's everything?" "Hey, Jane, it's been rough," I began, explaining the situation. Jane listened patiently, then said, "You know, kids at Emily's age are often influenced by so many factors. Peer pressure, the desire to fit in, and sometimes, unfortunately, by family too." "I know," I replied, "but I just want her to see how amazing she already is. You've done your part. Sometimes affirmation from others can be powerful. Let her see how others view her." And she was right. Later that evening, my phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Emily. "Hey, Mom, I saw your post," her message began, "and I read all the comments. It's a lot to take in." I replied immediately, "I just wanted to remind you of how many people love and appreciate you for who you are." There was a pause before she wrote back, "Thanks, Mom. I've been thinking a lot. Can we meet tomorrow?" Relief washed over me. "Of course, Em. Anytime." It was a small victory, but it was a start. The power of kind words and affirmation had managed to pierce through the cloud of confusion and doubt, if only just a little. The sun was high in the sky as I approached the house where I once lived. My memories of it were interlaced with emotions, both fond and painful. I took a deep breath and rang the doorbell, bracing myself for the confrontation. Clara, with her signature tight bun, answered the door. Her eyes narrowed at the sight of me. "Lisa," she remarked, her voice cold. "I need to speak with Max," I said, meeting her gaze with determination. Before she could retort, Max's voice came from behind her. "Let her in, Mom." Stepping into the familiar living room, I felt a rush of past memories. But there was no time for sentimentality. "We need to talk about Emily," I began. Max, his face betraying a mixture of annoyance and defiance, said, "I knew you'd have something to say about it." "Why the surgery, Max?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. "She's just a child." He exhaled sharply, his gaze unwavering. "She looks too much like you, Lisa." I was taken aback. What does that even mean? Clara, never one to stay silent, added, "Every time we see her, we're reminded of you, of everything that went wrong. I want her to be her own person, not your shadow," Max declared, his tone biting. "I don't care if this isn't what Emily wants. I want to forget. Every time I look at her, I see you, and it brings back all the bad memories." His words stung, but I wouldn't back down. "So you'd put Emily through a life-changing procedure just to erase your memories of me?" Before he could respond, a noise from the hallway caught our attention. Emily stood there, her face pale, having overheard our conversation. The room was heavy with a painful silence. Tears filled her eyes as she looked between the three of us, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is this why you want me to change, Dad? Because of Mom?" Max, for the first time, seemed lost for words. The reality of the situation and the weight of his daughter's pain evident on his face. The atmosphere in the room was thick with tension. Emily, her eyes red from the tears, stood there, a mix of hurt and anger on her face. All eyes were on her, waiting for her to speak. "Dad," she began, her voice trembling. "Is this what you think of me? Just a reflection of Mom?" Max looked flustered, clearly caught off guard. "Emily, it's not like that." "Then what is it like?" she retorted, her voice gaining strength. "You want to change me because you don't like what you see? Because I remind you of Mom?" Clara attempted to intervene. "Emily, it's for the best. You'll understand when you're older." I watched as my daughter squared her shoulders, facing her grandmother. "No, Grandma. I understand now. I understand that I'm just a pawn in this twisted game between you two and Mom." Feeling a need to step in, I said, "Em, this isn't your fault. None of this is. You shouldn't be dragged into our problems." Emily turned to face me. "But I am, Mom. I'm right in the middle of it." Max, seeming to find his voice, said, "Emily, I thought it would be a fresh start for us, away from the past." "At my expense?" Emily shot back, her eyes searching his for answers. "You're willing to change me, make me go through something so drastic, just so you can forget? Why can't you just accept me as I am?" Clara, looking more unsettled than I'd ever seen her, tried to speak. "We just thought it was for the best." "For whose best, Grandma? Yours or mine?" Emily's voice quivered, but her resolve was clear. I felt a mix of pride and heartache seeing my daughter stand up for herself, confronting the two people who were supposed to support and love her unconditionally. Emily took a deep breath. "I don't want to be someone's reminder or regret. I want to be Emily. That's who I am. And if you can't accept that, then maybe I don't belong here." She looked at me, her eyes pleading. "Mom, can we go?" I nodded, moving towards her. "Of course, sweetie." As we walked out of the house, leaving behind the shadows of the past, I felt a mix of emotions. There was pain and sorrow for the family ties that were fraying. But above all, there was pride. Pride in my daughter, who had taken a stand for herself, asserting her identity in the face of adversity. A few weeks after the confrontation, I received an official letter. Max was taking legal action, intending to gain full custody of Emily. My heart raced as I read the document. The thought of losing my daughter was unbearable. I immediately reached out to a lawyer, Jenna, who had been recommended to me by a friend. "Jenna, I won't let him take her. Not after everything," I asserted during our first meeting. Jenna looked over the papers, her expression thoughtful. "Don't worry, Lisa. The court will always consider Emily's wishes, especially given her age." The day of the hearing arrived faster than I had anticipated. The courtroom was cold and intimidating. Max sat on the other side, Clara by his side, shooting me venomous looks. The judge, a stern-looking woman with gray hair, called the session to order. "We are here to determine the custody of Emily Harrison. Both parties will present their cases." Max's lawyer, a tall man with slicked-back hair, began, "Your Honor, Mr. Harrison believes that it's in Emily's best interest to remain with him. He provides a stable environment and is fully capable of supporting her." Jenna stood up. "Your Honor, with all due respect, this case is not about financial support. It's about emotional and psychological well-being. Lisa has always been there for her daughter, even after moving away for work. The decision to alter Emily's appearance was made without her knowledge or consent, which has caused a rift between the child and her father." The judge nodded, making notes. "What does Emily have to say?" Emily, looking both nervous and determined, stood up. "Your Honor, I want to live with my mom. I love my dad, but I don't feel like he sees me for who I am. He's trying to change me, and I don't think that's right." Max interjected. "Your Honor, she's been influenced by Lisa. She doesn't know what's best for her." I couldn't hold back. "Max, this isn't about us. Stop making it about our past and focus on our daughter's future." The judge raised her hand, signaling for silence. "Enough. I've heard enough. Given Emily's age and her expressed wishes, and taking into account the circumstances presented, I believe it's in Emily's best interest to reside with her mother." A wave of relief washed over me. Max looked defeated, and for the first time, Clara was speechless. As we left the courtroom, Emily hugged me tightly. "Thank you, Mom, for everything." I kissed the top of her head. "Always, Em, always." The court had spoken, and justice had been served. But more importantly, my bond with Emily had emerged stronger, untouched by the bitterness of the past. The days following the court verdict were a whirlwind. Emily and I packed up her things from Max's house, a process that was surprisingly smooth, with Max avoiding confrontation. As we packed her things into boxes, Emily came across an old family photo album. She hesitated for a moment, then handed it to me. "Remember this, Mom." I opened the album, looking at pictures from happier times, beach vacations, birthdays, and Christmases. "Yes, sweetie, I do. Memories, both good and bad, shape us." She nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Even though things have changed, these moments were still real, right?" I pulled her into a hug. "Absolutely. Every moment we've shared, every challenge we've faced, has brought us to where we are today." With her belongings packed, we headed to our new home. It was a cozy apartment I had rented in a nice part of the city, close to Emily's new school. As we arranged her room, the doorbell rang. Opening the door, I found Jane, my best friend, with a big housewarming basket. "Thought you two could use some treats," Jane said with a smile. Emily's face lit up, seeing the basket filled with her favorite goodies. "Thanks, Aunt Jane." As the evening settled, the three of us sat on the balcony, enjoying the city lights. Jane turned to me. "You know, Lisa, you've shown immense strength through all of this." I took a deep breath. It was tough, but I had to stand up for Emily, for us. Emily, sipping her hot cocoa, chimed in. "And I'm glad you did, Mom. It made me realize how important it is to be true to oneself." Jane nodded. "That's a valuable lesson, Em. One many adults take years to learn." As the night wore on, the three of us shared stories, laughter, and dreams for the future. The weight of the past seemed to fade, replaced by the promise of new beginnings. In the days that followed, Emily and I settled into our new routine. She joined a local art club, channeling her feelings into beautiful paintings. I took up a new job and began rebuilding our life, one day at a time. One evening, as I prepared dinner, Emily walked into the kitchen, a thoughtful look on her face. "Mom, I've been thinking. Maybe someday, when things have cooled down, we can try to mend bridges with Dad. Not for the sake of the past, but for the future." I looked at her, admiring the maturity she displayed. "We'll see, Em. Time has a way of healing wounds. For now, let's focus on us, our dreams, and the adventures ahead." She smiled. "Deal." Life was by no means perfect, but it was ours. Together, Emily and I embarked on a journey of rediscovery, of healing, and of hope. The scars of the past remained, but they no longer defined us. We had each other, and in the end, that was all that mattered.
"All right, everyone's presentations are done," Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me and began to speak. "There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only." "Absolutely right." His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. "I'm leaving." After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, is something wrong?" Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. "Take care." That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. "I will do my best." Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. "Did you not hear what I said?" "I'm sorry." I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.